Okay, hi guys. So in this part of the tutorial, we are going to recreate those rings and as well build in some sort of controller so we can move them side by side. Okay, so when I was building this, the idea was to have easy way to shift the whole circle animation on the x-axis. If I want to just customize this between different copies of this rig, right? So how do we do this? This part will get a little bit more complex than the other ones, but hopefully I'll be able to explain this pretty well. Okay, so the way you want to write your expressions and all the rigs to kind of think ahead how you're gonna use them, right? So if I change the size of this, like so you can see it better. So the way I see this animated is from this side, right? From the center of the left side. So in theory, what you could do is you could like shift the anchor point to the side and use scale. But the problem is, how you can see, this gets bigger as the scale gets bigger, and I don't want that. I want the stuff to be just kept exactly the same amount. For example, if I set the circle size to be exactly the same size as like X is. Okay, so the way we can do this, it's animating, we can do this animating this amount, right? But the moment it scales from the middle. So what you want to do is to shift this anchor point to the side of this layer, right? So there's expression for that. It's the similar expression we used before. So what you want to do is define this layer. Actually, let me just do that. There you go. So we're defining this layer. We're defining this layer's values at a time, right, from the endpoint. Now define layer side. So top, left, width, and height. And using these values and this one, like so, we can just push this to the left hand side and that in the center, right? So now if I check, that's what happens. Perfect. Now what we want to do is build a couple of controllers. Okay, so add a slider. I will explain this in a second. The circle and size to this animation. So at the moment it's just 0.5 to 1, which is fine. You can even see that. I'm just grabbing it so I can have some values to work with in the Expressionist. Okay, so now circle animation. That's one of our variables. Control. And the way we're gonna use this animation of these keyframes on the size of the circle using linear expression. But first we have to set some variables. So circle min size, minimal. So this is the smallest the circle will ever be. Circle max size equals this one. So we can we can copy this code and just change this part. So basically, just in case you don't remember, I'm calling out this layer and then I'm calling out effect under this name, okay? And then I get the value, basically. Circle animation is the one that has keyframes, so I use this instead of time. And if this goes from 0 to 1, I want the circle itself goes from this size to that size, max size, okay? And at the end, since this is a circle, I'll put this value in both X and Y. Okay, so now let's see if this works. Okay, nothing happens, and that's because, just 1 second. Ah, okay, there you go. So if I make this like 500, as you can see, all of that is driven by these keyframes. Now, the linear expression works in a way that basically it takes one input and the other and converts it from one input to the other. So you can use something called time, or you can actually specify different values that change over time that will trigger this change. And currently I'm just basically changing the value from 0, which is this one, and here's 1, to change from this is the lowest number, which is 0, to that size. Okay, so that's how you can trigger this animation. And the way this is pretty fun way to work with, because for example, if I look at the graph editor, it's just basically linear animation, right? But if I ease this and I play this back, you can see it slows down a little bit. I can then, for example, bring this like so. Just play the preview. So now it's just different animation, and I'm just only modifying these keyframes, right? So I can go like this. Okay, so this is pretty fun way to work with, and that way you can just basically like attach some values to one keyframe, so 2 keyframes, and then just modify them, and that will feed into all the values that linked. Now, this is the second part of this setup. It's when this goes to the highest level, I want this to disappear, and we can do this with the opacity and so on and so on. But I want to use stroke. Yep. There we go. So for example, put the keyframe here and bring the keyframe. Okay. So when it goes to the end, I want to have a keyframe, and then it goes next keyframe to 0. And in theory, it would just look like this and fades away. Now, then if I want to synchronize this, I have to go in and move this, and then so on and so on. It's fine if there's only 2 keyframes and so on, but we can actually link this value so it reacts to the circle size. And let me show you how to do it. For that, this will be a little bit more complex way. Basically, we're going to be using linear expression as before, but we have to create a couple more controls. So we have the stroke size, that's fine. Another thing we'll need . When I was editing this tutorial, I realized I didn't explain the stroke animation setup properly. So this is the code. So basically, in this case, we're using a linear expression to drive the whole animation. And the way it's set up is we're defining controller, which is this guy. And then we're defining what's the smallest value the stroke will be, which is 0, so it disappears. We have, let me just bring up the FX controller stack. Close this one. Like so. So, let me just make some space so you can actually see this a bit better. Okay, so we have a circle stroke max, right? So it's one of these controllers. This one, we determine how big the circle is at the beginning, how thick, right? And circle minimum size and max size. So these guys are basically controlling how soon the fade happens using this built-in controller, another slider. So if I show you this quickly, so circle fade and circle min size, right? So if I open up the Expressionist for you, so on control layer, you have a slider which is linked to the circle max size, how big the circle we want to be when it reaches the end. At the moment it's 500. Then you define another controller, which is this guy, circle fade. And then this one just takes percentage of this value and then subtract it from it. So for example, 500 minus 100, because at the moment it's like 0.2, which is like 20%. This determines the value, the stroke will start fading away, right? So if I bring this one here, so actually more space. So if we look at the animation, it grows bigger and then starts fading around here, but the whole animation doesn't stop till here, okay? So if I bring stroke and size. Oops. So you can see what's happening. The size keeps growing, and then around here the stroke itself starts fading. Just bring this, there you go. So you can see the whole curve goes down and fade, right? Now the expression for this one, it's this. Okay, so again, stroke size min, which is like the smallest value we'll ever get. Maximum, this is what we're starting with. Circle minimum size, which is this controller. It has another expression applied, and then circle max size. So this one, no, this is a stroke. This one. So this one controls how big the stroke, how big the circle will be overall. And now instead of using these keyframes from circle animation, which we use to drive the whole circle, I'm using the circle size. Okay, because this value changes over time, right? And I'm using this expression linear, so basically using circle animation, which is this, going from minimum, which is 400, because at some point around here, where are you? There, it's about to hit 400, to maximum, which is here. At this, between these two values, it will perform this conversion from going at the moment 10 pixels to nothing. Okay, so this way, the whole setup, it's, let me just hide this for a second. Okay, so with this setup, we can basically set up our overall circle animation, this whole kind of pulse. And we have a gentle fade off before it ever reaches the highest size, right? Like before it reaches the maximum. Okay, so basically that's how you build this automated controller made of multiple values which get affected at the same time. It's a little bit complex, but now once you set this up, I can change the animation like so, and both of these guys will follow because we built a bunch of other controllers which are reacting, you know, to everything basically around it. Okay, so hopefully this is a little bit more clear, and then back to the original recording of the tutorial. Slider, so you can see it can affect the fade as well, how quickly the fall off is, right? So you can go really steep, or we can just get it like so. So basically the circle will start fading way ahead before it gets to the end. Okay, but I just bring it to like around 0.2. I just want this to happen pretty towards the end before it actually stops. I want to control the position of this layer, but with a slider. So I can just basically position it precisely on those dots, right, in the grid. So the way to do that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna literally take these values, just like plug it like this. Okay, get it to Expressionist. Okay, so we have a number of dots and a gap as well between them. Now we need to calculate the length of them. What I want to do is I want to have the circle dead in the composition center where the X is. So basically we're gonna take this position, which is at the moment here. We're gonna subtract the dot length. Now there's two things that's gonna happen, and I'm gonna explain them in a second. So if we just feed this into X and position Y. Okay, so it pushes automatically all the way here, right? So what we want to do is have a controller which will automatically offset that for us. Now the thing is, this distance is pretty big. It should be here without any kind of offset because we're using the whole dot length to do that. So what we can do is divide that by 2. There you go, and it just brings it here. Now, as before, it uses another gap. So we have like 9 dots, and it uses actually 10 gaps in between those dots, basically, which explain like the previous parts of this tutorial. So what you want to do is subtract 1 dot from the whole number of dots it uses for calculation. So now it should bring this exactly to the edge. Okay, so let's add another controller. Okay, so this will be circle offset. Okay, circle offset. So this will be the amount we're gonna offset. Okay, so how do we do this? We need to use this length with the lower number of dots. So it's pretty easy. There we go. So we have it all the way there, and let's see what's happening. Circle offset. So if we move this, there we go. It goes like half a circle at a time. So we can quickly move this whole rig, and animation still performs, right? Like so. Okay, so I think this was the most difficult part to explain. Sorry a little bit when I was losing which things was referring to where, but I think we're mostly there in terms of the whole setup. Okay, thanks for watching.